really quickly. All right, everybody, we're going to get started here in a couple minutes, so go ahead and find a seat. Just a reminder, if you could just make sure you and your family stay seated 3 seats apart from other families so we can still follow our COVID restrictions, that'd be great. We're going to start here about 2 minutes. Go ahead and start finding your seat. Everybody, we're going to go ahead and start it now. Super excited to have Eric and Lindsay here with us today to share about their ministry in Hungary. I was playing disc golf with Eric a couple days ago. He was sharing with me about some of the things that he's going to talk about. And even though 2020 has been a challenging year, especially for nonprofits and for missionaries, it sounds like there's some really, really exciting things that are going on in Hungary that they're going to share about. I'm super excited for you guys to hear the way that God has been working there in Hungary in their ministry. So we're going to get started. I'll go ahead and get started in prayer. So go ahead and bow your heads with me. Father, thank you so much for the ministry of Eric and Lindsay in Hungary. We thank you that you have kept them safe this year during this pandemic. We thank you that they're here with us, so we get to hear from them. I ask that you would bless this time, that we would be able to rejoice with them, and that you would work here in this room right now. We ask this in your name. Amen. All right, Eric, Lindsay, take it away.
All right. Hello, everybody.
One more thing. If you have any questions, we're going to try to save questions till the end, and then so think of questions. If you have a question, raise your hand, and I'll run over to you and let you speak into the mic. If you have a question that can't wait, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll run this mic over to you. But yeah, so.
Perfect. We are very excited to be here with you guys. It's a pleasure to be back at Glenwood, at our sending church, and seeing a lot of supporters and faces that we know. And so we're super blessed to be here. Even with COVID and having to wear masks and distance from each other, it's still a blessing to be in community with one another. And we also say hi to everybody online as well, and then also for those being recorded for later. And we are excited to share about what's going on in Hungary these last 2 years. So I actually served in Hungary for 3.5 years before we got married, and now we've been there for 2 years. So we got there August 2018, and now we've been there for a little over 2 years, and we want to share what God's been doing and just give you an update on things. We have some videos from Hungarians that we serve with, so you'll see some of those as well, and we're excited to share that. And now I'll let Lindsay.
Hello. Oh, okay. Here I am. Okay, so we just want to give A little bit of background on Hungary. You know, some of you have heard from us before and some of you haven't. So, am I good? Oh, okay. All right, so Hungary sits right in the middle of Europe, so it's part of Central Europe. They're very concerned that you don't call them Eastern Europe, so they're Central Europe. There's 10 million people there, and 3% have a faith-based relationship with Jesus Christ. To give a little wider context, in all of Central and Eastern Europe, there's 30 million young people, and 1% of them have a personal relationship with Jesus. And then a little history about Hungary. I'll explain this map in a second, but so in the last 100 years, it's been pretty rough for them. They were on the losing side of World War I, and as a result of that, so the white part is Hungary today, and the red slashy stuff was Hungary previous to World War I. So they lost 2/3 of their land as a punishment for being on that side. And so to this day, that holds a lot of bitterness for them. Even the young people know that this is a really serious thing, and holds a lot of bitterness, causes a lot of strife with the countries around them that got their land. So particularly with Slovakia and Romania, there are not good relations as a result of that. And so lost their land, went on to lose World War II as well, and then suffered under the communist regime for 45 to 50 years. And a result of that, just a lot of pessimism, distrust, and secularism pervaded their culture and their country. And particularly related to that, the church in Hungary was just really crushed during this time of communism. If a church wanted to stay above ground, they had to compromise their values according to what the government said, and otherwise they had to go underground in order to truly live out their faith according to how Jesus calls us to. And so what this means today is that atheism is very strong in this country. The spread of people's sympathy towards Christianity is pretty interesting. So the grandparents of the young people today are the ones that would remember a time before communism where they could worship freely, and so they might have retained a value of church going, particularly the Catholic Church was the main denomination in Hungary before this time, and still today. The parents of the young people today grew up in communism, and so they are largely atheistic and either hostile to Christianity or just indifferent. And then the young people are living in a freedom that their parents did not have at this age, and so they are open and searching, but they often have zero basis for God. They have zero box to put him into, or at most they have attended Catholic Church on on Christmas or Easter, with their grandparents. And so as a result of that, you can see that the need in Hungary is huge, and the opportunity is also huge, because they really are open to hear and talk about God, about anything.
And so that's a little bit about Hungary, the country, and then we wanted to share a little bit about Josiah Venture and the organization that we serve with, and we have a video right here to share a little bit about it.
King Josiah was only 16 years old when he began seeking God. By the time he was 26, God had used this young ruler to bring revival, leading his people back to the truth. Today, Central and Eastern Europe desperately needs its own Josiahs, young men and women who are ready and willing to lead people to Christ. God has called Josiah Venture to be a part of this movement. Every day we see him working as we share Jesus with young people through our English and music camps, performing arts, and sports ministries. As we train students and leaders, raising up men and women who are committed to Christ and discipling others. As we partner with local churches to build healthy, reproducing communities of believers. God is changing lives, and He's changing countries. It's happening now. But we know this is just the beginning. God is asking us to follow Him as He continues to bring hope and life to this generation. Young Josiahs are waiting. Will you join us?
Great. So we wanted to give a background of why our organization is called Josiah Venture. And it's, as you saw, it's after the King Josiah, who was just a really young king, and he turned the nation back towards God. And that's what we're praying for Hungary. We're praying for young Josiahs to be raised up in the country of Hungary that will turn their country back towards God. And that's what we get really excited about. And we have a vision statement is to see a movement of God among the youth of Hungary that finds its home in the local church and transforms society. And that's what we're all about. We want to see youth getting connected to the local church, and through that, we want to see the church transform the society around them. And so what that means in practical terms is we serve alongside local churches in Hungary. Right now we're serving regularly with 7 churches. And what we do is we come alongside youth pastors, church volunteers, and we help them do youth ministry. So a lot of these youth pastors are not paid. I've never heard of a paid youth pastor in Hungary. Our youth pastor at our church actually owns 3 businesses and is also the youth pastor of our church. And so what we do is we come alongside these youth pastors and support them. We give them curriculum or ideas, or we walk with them as they're trying to serve their students. And what we're praying for is students that are able to dive deep into God's word, that are able to grow in their faith, and at some point are able to live out their faith and share who God is with their friends and become disciple makers themselves. And so what we do is we're an equipping organization. So we help youth leaders, volunteers, we equip them to do discipleship in order so that they can help their students do discipleship. And we think through that we're going to see a change in the country of Hungary. And so now we want to talk a little bit about the last 2 years. You'll see a picture there. That's from camp this summer. You'll hear in a little bit, but we were able to do camps as normal in Hungary this summer. So it was a little bit different than probably what you guys experienced. But we've been in Hungary for 2 years now. And one of the big things is we moved to Budapest. And Budapest is the capital. There's 2 million people that live there. And it's really where the best language learning is. And so we moved there with the commitment that we need to learn this language, and this is the place to do it. We're not necessarily huge fans of big cities, but God really drew us over to Budapest. And so, and language has become a huge part of our lives the last 2 years. And so we're going to share a video of how we get to language, just so you can see kind of the sites. It's not a professional video. I did it with the camera right here on my chest, and so just bear with us. But you'll get to see some sites, and so I'll explain while you watch it. So every day, or actually like 3 days a week, we catch a train, because actually the fastest way to travel within Budapest is on trains. There's 4 train stations. And so we take a train, and then this is the train station. It's not the nicest one, but we have to walk from the train station. We walk to our tutor, and we have this tutor. She's been working with us. She commits 15 hours a week to teaching us. And it's been really cool to have that relationship with her. You'll see her in a second briefly. I tried to freeze it. So this is me walking to class. It's a little crazy and all over the place. But it's good for exercise. So she'll be coming in a second. But she is not a believer. And in the past 2 years, we've been able to have a lot of really cool conversations with her, where we've been able to talk about who Jesus is. a lot of our studies, actually, we take things like the Bible Project videos, and they're in Hungarian as well, some of them, like 10 of them, and then we watch them at home. We write down in Hungarian everything we listen to, and then we bring it back, and she watches with us, and then we talk about it. And it's become a really cool practice of having deeper conversations with her. And now Lindsay's going to read some Hungarian to you.
So as you can see up there, we have Matthew 28:19 through 20. And so I'll read it out in Hungarian so you can get a feel for what it sounds like. So, ezért menjetek el, és minden embert, minden nemzetben tegyetek az én tanítványommá. Merítsétek be őket az Atya, a Fiú és a Szent Szellem nevében. Tanítsátok őket, hogy engedelmeskedjenek mind annak, amit én parancsoltam nektek. Biztosak lehettek benne, hogy állandóan veletek leszek. Igen, veletek maradok minden nap a korszak végéig.
Yeah, that's a little bit of Hungarian for you. As you can tell, it doesn't look anything like English, which is both kind of depressing, but also it's a good challenge. And so we think that in order to be in Hungary long term, we need to learn the language. And if we want to be part of the culture, if we want to speak in their heart language, then language is key. And so we've really taken on language the last 2 years. We do church in Hungarian, we do youth group in Hungarian, we lead small groups at times in Hungarian, and it's a challenge, but it's really fun. And the Hungarians really respect us because we do these things. They're used to missionaries and foreigners coming through, attempting, and then leaving. And to stay and actually get to the level we're at now, it means a lot to them. With that, I wouldn't say we're amazing Hungarian speakers. We butcher it a lot, and they have a lot of grace for the most part. Other than my 15-year-old guys that are on my soccer team, they have no grace, but that's fine. And so that's the Hungarian language. And then, let me check. One of the things we were praying about as we got to Budapest is, where does God have us long term? And we got connected to a church called Budafolk. It's a Baptist church. And actually, when I interned with my brother and a guy named Austin Elkins for 6 months in 2011 in Budapest. And we had no connections. JV was completely new in Hungary. And we tried connecting with as many church leaders as we could. And one of these church leaders, his name was Isti, and he's like, yeah, come to a youth group, we'll show you what it's like. We tried 2 or 3 times to find it, and we couldn't find it. We'd call him on our phone and be like, hey, we're not finding where you're telling us, and we just ended up just giving up. We couldn't find where this youth group was. And then the next week, the 3 of us, we traveled to Ljubljana, Slovenia, the capital of Slovenia. We were helping with an English camp. Part of our job was to go into this city and ask Slovenes about God and what they think. And it was just a practice to get confidence. And so we were walking down the street in the capital of Slovenia. We stopped this guy on his bike. We started talking to him about God. And he said, yeah, I believe in God. I'm not Slovene. I'm from Budapest, Hungary. And we're like, oh, that's cool. We're living there for 6 months. And he said, yeah, I've heard of JV. And we told him that's impossible. We don't know anybody in Hungary. Nobody knows about JV in Hungary. He's like, yeah, I was trying to connect with some guys that were trying to get to our youth group. And we're like, are you Isti? And he's like, yeah, are you Mark and Eric? And it turned out we found Isti. It was just in another country and another capital. So fast forward 7 years, and Isti became the youth pastor of Budafolk Baptist 2 years ago. And that was when we arrived in Hungary. And I had a relationship with him before. I knew him. We were friends. And it was about the time we started praying about coming to Budafolk for the next 2 years. And it felt like God was kind of merging our stories once again, where we got to serve with him. So we've been serving with Isti and Anna, his wife, for the last 2 years. This church is considered a big church in Hungary. It's about 200 people. The church I was in Veszprém, which is another city, was 30 people. So that's just to show you the differences. Budapest is the capital, so you get more people. This church has 2 paid staff. They have a pastor, and they have a groundskeeper. And it's it's not very normal to even have a paid pastor in Hungary. So that's really cool. But Ishti is not a paid youth pastor. He owns 3 businesses, and he runs the youth group. And so we've had a lot of joy of coming alongside him. He's not a seasoned youth worker. He's a businessman. He's a visionary. But he was discipled well as a young man. He has a heart to see young people come to Christ. And so it feels like God's really connected us to him in ministry, and we're really excited for that. And so we're going to show you a video where Ishti is going to introduce himself and talk about the ministry.
Hi, I'm Istvan. I'm the youth pastor at Budapest Baptist. That's where Eric and Lindsay help with the youth group, with the youth ministry. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 38 years old. I grew up in a Christian family. I saw my parents, grandparents serve in church, in youth group, in several different fields of ministry. So when I had the calling from God and the invitation from the church to step up as youth pastor, I couldn't resist. It's been over 2 years ago, and we've seen a lot of growth, and we've seen a lot of potential in our youth group. We are one of the largest youth groups in the country. That's Hungarian standards. We're a country of 10 million, and our weekly attendance is between 40 and 60 people. And we see a lot of potential in our youth group, who we believe could produce, should produce the next spiritual leaders in the youth group, for the youth group, and for the church as well, and also just in civil life, where they could be leaders in their families, leaders in the school they're at, leaders amongst their peers, and leaders just in life in general. And that's our biggest prayer request, so that we could see the needs, we could understand the needs of each student, so they could take a step forward in their faith. We have house groups where we have the potential of understanding them more and reaching out to them more, but there's a great need for us to be able to set up real discipleship relationships and care for the students that way as well, so that they could really take the next step in their spiritual life as well. We want to reach out to the people around us. We want to reach out toward their friends, their classmates, their neighbors, and also the people living around us. Our church is located in Budapest. That's the capital of Hungary. And so there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of schools. There's a lot of activity going on around us in the city, which we want to be a part of. We have a soccer ministry going on with the help of Eric. We had our first summer reach out camp, which was a great success, and we saw students really stepping up and showing love and caring for the students who came from outside. We saw some people repent and give their lives over to God. So there's a lot of potential, but there's also a lot of work that needs to be done. So if you could pray for us here in Budapest, that we could really do what's needed of us. Thank you. Hi.
Awesome. So that's Ishti. Him and his wife, they're having their first baby in February as well. So if you guys could be praying for them, they would really appreciate it. And it's really a blessing to serve alongside him and his wife. And together, one of the first things we did in our youth ministry was we wanted to make house groups, or we often called them read-through groups here at Glenwood when we started these. And it was where students read the Bible throughout the week, and then we'd meet together and talk about what we learned in God's Word and had community with one another. And our goal is to have every kid in our youth group reading the Bible on a regular basis. And we think that part of our role as leaders is to be meeting with a select few of students, because we can't meet and care for every single kid in the youth group. But if we can separate the load and care for individuals on a deeper level, we could see a lot of growth in this youth group. And so Lindsay's going to share about her house group, which has been going for about 2 years now.
Yeah, so if you receive our updates, you've seen their names. So I'll just point them out. You don't have to remember. But from left to right, we have Vivi, Detti, Pani, and Rani. And I just wanted to share you briefly about them. They've actually been a difficulty in my life. They're not the easiest girls to connect to. Youth group, they would it's gotten better now, and I'll talk about that, but they would just be in this little knot that you could not get into. You couldn't talk to them. Nobody talked to them. And so I would stumble along in Hungarian trying to have a conversation with zero help from them. So it was very difficult. And then actually a year ago, we started these house groups, and I and another Hungarian were assigned to ask them if they would want to be in a house group with us. And I thought they would probably say no, but they said yes, so that was very exciting. And so for the last year, we've met every couple of weeks. They would read their Bible at home, and we would come together and talk about it. And so just over time, we've really seen them open up, at least to us, as they shared their hearts and their thoughts and their wonderings about God. And two of them, Vivi here on the far left, and then Pani, this, I don't know what to say, yeah, the blonde one. When this group started, they were not believers. And over the course of this year, they have both come to know Jesus and have repented. And I want to share a little about Pani in particular. She repented during the quarantine time, just by herself on a walk, actually. And then she got baptized right when things opened up in Hungary. And then this summer, God led her to want to step out from her group and to want to get to know others in the youth group. And so she started coming to events that the rest of the girls weren't coming to, which was not the norm up until that point. And she shared with me and with others that she wanted to grow in this area, which I thought was very brave as well, to share publicly like that. And then actually she has invited several non-believers to join our house group and to be a part of our community. So it's just been really fun to see this whole group grow, and particularly Pani. And so we're praying that her desire to reach out outside of their comfort zone would transfer to the other girls in her group, and also that they would someday soon be bringing others to know Christ as well.
Great. And so language has taken a lot of our time in the last 2 years, which has been super important, and our team has really protected the time that we have to just focus on language. And with language, local ministry has just been a huge part of what we've been doing in Hungary, where a lot of our time and efforts and relationships have been spending in deepening and serving at this youth group. But one other thing is camps and interns. So I'm the camp director in Hungary. Lindsay's the intern director. And we do summer camps. And everybody seems to do summer camps in Hungary, so that's not new, even here as well. But these camps are more of tools that we offer youth pastors for year-round discipleship. And so we offer them this camp, which is an evangelistic camp, where we do training with them before the camp, with their young leaders, with their more mature students, where we help them start to think about discipleship. We help them start to get to think about evangelism. We give them the tools to do these things. We help them on what does it look like to lead an effective small group? How do you lead games? Just even practical stuff like that. And then we give them that training, the theory, and then camps are the time to practice it, where it's safe. They don't have to go walk on the street and just find a stranger. They can invite their friends to camp and then practice what they learned during the training. And so I get really excited about camps, and camps were a big question mark this summer. We had no idea what was going to happen. Actually, the beginning of June, Hungary announced that camps were allowed to happen, and which I was really thankful for, because I didn't know what was going to happen. We decided to do day camps, and we actually doubled our camps from last year. So even with COVID, we did twice as many camps from the year before with 3 new churches, and it was amazing to see God just really open doors at camp. We often in camp ministry or summer ministry, we rely on teams from the U.S. We rely on interns from the U.S., which we love and we want to continue. But camps this summer, because there were no teams, something changed in the local churches' minds where they realized, wait a minute, this is our camp. We're in charge of this camp. And this is what we've been praying for. This is what we've been wanting them to take hold of. But until this summer, they hadn't stepped up and taken control of camp. And this summer, we just saw every church step up and said, no, we're going to lead this camp. We want to go through this training. We want to see our students come to Christ. And in previous years, we've had 1 or 2 church members from each church that would come to training, would prepare for camp, would help lead it. This year we had more than 40 young people and college students and youth pastors that stepped up and said, I want to lead something at our camp. I want to be the one that's reaching these students. And what happened was, instead of students getting connected to these cool foreign people that speak another language, these students got connected to these church members and these students from the church and the youth pastor. And this is what we've been praying for, and this summer it seemed like God just totally flipped it, and he just opened the doors for that to happen. So we're praising God for that, and we're trying to figure out, okay, where do we go from here? We just saw God open a door that we've been trying to figure out for a few years. And we're not closing any doors on short-term teams. We love short-term teams. We love interns from the U.S. But we want to keep the emphasis. We want to keep the local church in Hungary the hero of camp, where kids are getting connected to the church and not to someone who's there for just a week. And so this summer we just saw God open tons of doors. We saw a lot of fruit from this summer. Here's a picture from camp that we did with a new church this summer. And actually next summer we're praying to increase our camps. We don't know if COVID will affect camps or not, but we did 6 camps this summer. We're praying to do 8 camps next summer. And we actually have the churches to do it. So we had 2 new churches that said, hey, we want to do camps next summer with you guys. And we get really excited about that because part of camps is meeting with these youth pastors around the year and seeing what are the needs of your youth group, how are you guys doing, what do you guys need to take the next step as a group, and what do your students need to help them take the next step in their faith. And so this summer we did multi-camps. So usually we do English camps, so we need a team from the U.S. to do that, but this year we did multi-camp where we had some English classes, which we led. We had sports, we had media or music. It was whatever the church was talented at. So we asked the church, what are you guys good at? What can you do? And they took responsibility to lead these things. And so we feel like this will be the direction we'll go in the future, and we're really excited for that. And we're praising God for the tons of fruit that we saw this summer. And we have interns. Oh, yeah. Sorry. And so you see some faces up here. You already met Ishti. That's his wife, Anna. They're on the bottom. They're the youth leaders at Budafolk, at the church we're at. They're an awesome group. And Anna's a newer Christian, but she's just amazing at one-on-one discipleship and caring for girls and connecting with them. And Ishti's just this visionary where he wants to see the youth group go in a certain direction, and he's going to do it. And that's pretty special, actually. We don't have a lot of youth leaders that are like that, and so we're really thankful for them. At the top of the screen, there's Rita and David, and they're leaders at a church in Jur, which is a city where actually Rob and Liz live, if you guys know them. And he is the youth pastor, and she's kind of the spearhead for discipleship that's happening at their church, along with her sister. So she's the one that got us connected, and we did camps with them. And we love your prayers for them as they lead the ministry. They just got engaged, so that's really exciting as well. And so they do a great job of caring for their students in Jur. And then on the far right is a new church that we connected with this summer. They're from Szeged, and Petty is the one on the right. And he led the camp this summer. And he's never led a camp before in his life. He's a pretty new Christian, like 2 years. And he did an amazing job. The first day we were seeing some of their leaders really just hanging out with each other, and I was like, Petty, we need to get these leaders connecting with students and not with each other. And he did an amazing job of sitting everybody down and saying, hey, this is the reason for camp, this is why we're doing it. We need to stop connecting with one another and start connecting with students. And from that day, the camp totally changed. We just saw tons of fruit from that camp. We saw 5 girls give their lives to Christ at that camp. And Petty just did an amazing job. And him and his girlfriend, who's up there, they're praying about missions, and they want to do something with missions. They don't know what it looks like. And so we're just praying for them that God would give them a place where they could follow that desire. And so we'd love your prayers for them as well. And now intern.
Yeah. So Eric's the camps director, and I'm the intern director. So we make a good team together. And the reason for interns, you probably know people who've come from Glenwood, and actually Eric and I each were interns with JV before coming over, but we asked college students to come over and help us with the camps ministry through the summer. So it's a time of growing in their leadership skills and their discipleship skills, their ministry skills, and they work alongside us as we work alongside these churches and support them as they put on these camps. And so this summer we had 4 Hungarians, and we just couldn't be more thrilled with what God did. And specifically, it's really exciting because all 4 of these Hungarians have been discipled by different members of our team over the years. And so we just wanted to tell you quickly about each one of them. So Dorka is up there at the top. I've been discipling her for a year. And actually last fall she went through a really hard time. We were walking through doubting about the suffering in the world. And I had been wanting her to intern prior to that, and then I was nervous that she wouldn't be in a stable place. But God met her in that in the winter, and she stepped forward in trust of Him and trust of His goodness, and then was just on fire to disciple her friends. So during the quarantine time, she started 4 different discipleship relationships online. She shared the gospel with a girl through video chat, through a multi-week study, and then continued talking with her and pouring into her even though she hadn't repented. She led another girl to Christ, and then she dove into the Word with 2 different girls and helping them read on their own, and then they would come together and talk. So that was just really exciting to see that. And also at the same time, God gave her the idea for a discipleship training group for her youth leaders in her group. And so how this worked is that we would meet with her over video chat, along with Rita and David, who we introduced you to before, and we would train them in discipleship material, and then they would go and hold a training for the rest of the youth leaders in their group. So we did that 5 times, and they took a break in the summer, and now it's restarting, and I'll train her in something else next week, actually. But so it was just so fun to see her so on fire. And she really is the powerhouse for her youth group, for getting real intense discipleship going. And so she interned this summer and was just a wonderful leader, a wonderful disciple maker, and a huge inspiration to other Hungarians that she served alongside. And then she also started at a missions and theology school this fall. It's through JV in connection with a school in the UK. It's based in Czech, and the goal is to bring good missional theology education to the nationals in Central and Eastern Europe so they don't have to leave their home. And so the idea is that every 6 weeks they would go to Czech, if there wasn't COVID, for a week and have a full week of classes, and then the next 5 weeks they're at home serving 12 hours in ministry and studying and working. And so she's doing that and is really feels that God's calling her to ministry someday, well now, but in her future as well. And then Eric's going to share about Balint here on the bottom left.
Yeah, so Balint is the one with glasses right here on the bottom right. And he was at the church I was at when I was a single guy for 3.5 years in Veszprém. And he was not walking with God. He was a punk. He just didn't want to do anything with God. He just made youth groups super difficult, made camp super difficult. He was a pain in my backside. But at camp 5 years ago, he gave his life to Christ. And it's been amazing to see what God's been doing in his life since then. So after he gave his life to Christ, we started a Bible study where we just talked about what does it look like to read your Bible, what does it look like to follow Jesus, how do you live a life of obedience. And from that, he started leading a Bible study with his friends that aren't believers and doing the same thing with them. And then he interned this summer, which was awesome because I love spending time with him. And I got to see him serve and live out his faith, and it's been really cool just to see God take him from this place where he was just this big punk to a place where he's turning around and serving these kids and loving them. And actually, after summer, he decided to do this mission and theology school through Czech also. So he's doing classes every week, he's studying, but he's also serving 12 hours in his ministry. And what that looks like, he's actually starting a youth group. So he's the youth pastor now of this youth group. It's just a few people, but it's really cool just to see him take that on, want to see people in his community get to know who Jesus is. And so for me, it's really exciting to see that he actually texted me about an hour ago and said, hey, I need some help. I don't know what I'm going to do this Tuesday. And so I get to talk to him tomorrow and just talk through what he's learning and what's happening in the youth group. And we're just praising God for what he's done in Balin's life from 5-6 years ago till now. And we're excited to see how God's raising up these young Hungarians to be Josiahs in their context, in their city, and in the country as well. And now we have a video of Dorka. So here we go.
Hi, I'm Dorka from You're Hungry, and I know Erica and Lindsay because we started doing English camps with another missionary called Jessica Osborne, who is now went back to the States. And after that, Lindsay and Eric started to help us with the camps. And last year when I moved to Budapest, I started to meet up with Lindsay, who is my mentor now. And in May, we did a disciple maker training in a youth group with the helpers and the leaders of it. And it was really, really a great blessing because, to tell the truth, disciple making is not a term in our church, in our youth group. So it was really great to get us to focus on that. And during the summer, I was an intern with Josiah Venture, which was a huge blessing for me because I've learned about leadership, about discipleship, about connecting with students, about teamwork. It was amazing. And that actually helped me to decide that I want to go to Formation College, which is connected to Josiah Venture. This college has a little bit of a weird structure. It has one intensive week and then 5 to 6 weeks just staying at your local church, serving, volunteering, and now doing assignments and readings. So it's really crazy, but it's amazing. I really enjoy it. And now it's assessment season, and there are a lot of great topics which we dig into. And actually, the next week is our intensive conference. So I'm really looking forward to that. Thanks for listening.
Okay, so that's Dorka. She's brought a lot of energy to our team this summer, which was amazing, and a lot of passion. So we're really thankful for her. And one of the other things that I'm a part of is a soccer ministry, and it has the same idea as camps. It's a tool for churches where they can form their own team, and then we walk alongside them and train their leader in how to be a coach if they don't have that training, or how to be a disciple maker or a leader or someone who cares for these students. And so we started a team about a year ago at my church in Budafolk. I started it with a guy named Elish, and he came to Christ about a year and a half ago. And it's been really cool just to see him take that on. I asked him to coach the team with me before he became a Christian, actually. And he said no, he didn't want to. Doesn't sound good. He became a Christian, and then I asked him again, and he said, yeah, that sounds great, actually. So I was really thankful for that. And it's a team of about 5 kids from our youth group, and then we have 5 kids from the community that aren't connected to the church, but most of them are connected to someone on the team. And the goal of these teams is we can pour into these Christian kids and care for them and help them start to realize they can start living out their faith with these teammates that they have, who are their friends. And it's also for our church to step out and reach kids that would never come to youth group or church. So it'd be really hard for me to invite some kid on the street to come to youth group, because that's just a really big step. But I can invite them to come and play soccer any day of the week, and they're like, yes, I'll be there. And so we're trying to help teams connect with students in their community through sports. And actually, Edge is one of the fastest growing, it is the fastest growing ministry in Josiah Venture, and we're just seeing tons of fruit from it. And really, the core of it is these teams are located in local churches, they're run by local church members, and kids are getting connected to these local churches and hearing the gospel and being discipled. We had a video from Elish, but I don't think it's working. Nope. So sorry about that. We'll send it in an update letter probably. But one of the guys on the team, his name is Balu. He started coming to the team when we started a year ago. He has no connection to church or God. He comes from a pretty rough family. But he started coming to practice. He loved it. He started getting connected to Elish and I. And then he started coming to youth group, which was really cool, and started getting connected to other guys in the youth group. And we got to do a study with him about who is Jesus during the COVID, where he just came over and we talked about it and played FIFA, which is a video soccer game, which kids love there. And I do too, so it works out really well. And then at camp this summer, he actually gave his life to Christ. And it was really cool to see just him from the first day of practice until camp. And then he didn't actually come to Christ with myself or Elish. He came to Christ through the youth pastor, Ishti. So Ishti sat down with him, talked with him, asked him where he's at, and shared the gospel. And Balu responded to the gospel. And when that happened, I was with Elish, and Elish turned to me and said, hey, all these practices, all the meetings, all the hanging out with students was worth it because we saw Balu come to Christ. And that got me really excited because Elish started seeing this is the reason why we're doing this sports ministry. It's not because we just love soccer, but it's because we want to see kids come to know Jesus. And so that's the sports ministry. I get really excited about it. We're praying for more churches to adopt this in Hungary. And so that's part of my job when I go back. And so that's kind of what our life has looked like the last 2 years. It's been really busy, but we've seen God just totally open up doors, especially in the last 8 months with COVID. And we've been praying for 2 years now, but really in the last 6 months, where does God have us long term? Because we're not big city people. But the more we've been in Budapest, the more we felt God's hand saying, this is where I have you for the next amount of years. We don't know how many years, but we're praying it's long term. And we feel like he's been leading us to Budafolk. We've just seen a lot of fruit and a lot of growth, and we feel like we could be there for many years and just continue to see God work in that. So we're praying and looking about putting down roots in Budapest and staying at Budafolk, which we're really excited about. We went to Budapest just for language, and then God just really opened up a home for us. And we've realized that actually for ministry around the country, Budapest is where we have to be. Because I lead camps, I'm meeting with youth leaders around the country. Budapest is the core of Hungary, and every road leads to Budapest, literally, every road. And so if I want to go to one city, I have to go through Budapest to get to it, but I live in Budapest, so I can get anywhere in the country in about 2 hours, which is really great for meeting with youth leaders. And actually a lot of networking has happened because I live in Budapest. So 2 of the new camps we did this summer was through connections of people in Budapest. And so we're finding actually we're reaching more churches in the country just from living in Budapest. And so that's where we're planning to stay, and we're excited about that. And we just wanted to share with you our needs as well. And so you see up there that we have some prayer requests. And really we're praying for 2021 and for camps. And we don't know what's going to happen with COVID. We don't know what's going to happen with interns and short-term teams. But we've actually increased our camps. And we're just praying that God will just continue to open doors and give us strength. And we're actually praying for those 4 interns to intern again because I don't know if we could have done it this last summer without them. And so we're really excited about that. And so you could be praying for these Hungarian summer interns. I think all 4 of them are pretty excited about doing it. They have some questions, but we also have other Hungarians that saw it, and they're like, man, I would love to be a part of that next summer. So we're in talks with even more young Hungarians that want to do the internship next summer. And then we would ask you to pray for the local youth group, for Ishti and Anna as they have this baby, as they learn what it looks like to do ministry and have a new family member. And for Ishti as he owns 3 companies and is leading the youth group. Just your prayers for them would be amazing. So those are our needs as far as prayer goes. And then we have financial need. We With COVID, we lost some supporters, and then just other reasons that are pretty normal. After 2 years, we lost others. So we're trying to raise $850 of monthly support. And so we ask that if you aren't supporting us, and if you would just consider it and pray about it and see, would God have you supporting us on a monthly basis? And we recognize a lot of people in this room are our supporters already, and it's really fun for us to come here and just share what God's doing and show the investment you put in financially, but also the investment you put in personally and in prayers. We're seeing a lot of fruit because of that. And actually, the partnership you have with us, the things we're seeing in Hungary, the students' lives that are being changed, you're playing just as big a part in that as we are. And so we're extremely thankful for all of you. And we're really excited for this next year. There's a lot of questions for everybody with COVID. But we saw God just totally open doors this summer, and we're just asking that He would continue to do that in Hungary. So that's what we wanted to share. And now we'll open it up to some questions, if anybody has questions, and then we'll end after that.
The people that you had speak from Hungary spoke quite good English. Do most of the youth in Hungary speak some English?
Yeah, great question. In Budapest, the number is quite high. So it's because it's such an international city, a lot of people speak English. So I'm really surprised when I'm talking to even older people at our church, and then they'll switch to English for a second. I'll be like, wow, I didn't know you spoke English. In other parts of the country, it's a lot lower, but I would say probably 50% of students speak English pretty well, like this well. And most of them understand it because they watch US videos, YouTube, everything's in English, so that's how they learn. But actually in our youth group, we have a lot of students that don't speak any English. And on my soccer team of 10 kids, 1 speaks English, and the rest can't. They could say dog or cat, because we practice it sometimes just for fun. But they don't speak anything else. So for us, we've actually connected ourselves to these kids a lot, where we get to practice our Hungarian. And so that's, great question.
So for the kids who come to Christ, do they, what's the effect in their families? Are their parents upset with it? Do they have a lot of conflict in their family when they come to Christ? Or what do you usually see?
Yeah, you were asking about what's the parents' reaction. Yeah, it's interesting in Hungary. So there's no governmental persecution anymore. Actually, their government is almost more pro-church than ours is here in America. However, often the case will be that a student who comes to know Christ, a student might not choose to follow Christ because of the reaction of their parents to attending youth group and being around Christians. Sometimes it's just because they don't know the denomination. Until recently, only the Catholic Church was recognized, until 3 years ago, only the Catholic Church was recognized in Hungary. So people just don't even know about other kinds of churches. So it's a common story, sadly, that a student will not choose to follow Christ, even though they've expressed desire for what He can give them. And then, for example, with Pani and Vivi, who I shared about, both of them have had parents who are hostile to their involvement with our church. I think now they've just become resigned to it, which is better, I guess. So we're praying for their parents. But they won't even talk to them about God. Their parents won't engage with them about it. So just recently they could come to church. They were allowed to go to other things, not church. Now they can go to church. Yeah.
Great question. Any other questions? Yeah.
So after 2 years in Hungary, what's something that's been a pleasant surprise about either the culture or the country?
I don't know. Great question. Let me think. There's a lot. That's why I have to think. I think we talk about Hungarians and Americans when we meet with teams from the U.S. or with teams from Hungary, and we say that Americans are kind of like avocados, where they're kind of soft on the outside and everybody's their friend, and often you have to go deeper to have deeper conversations where the seed is. But with Hungarians, they're a lot like coconuts, where it's really hard to get through and get to know them. And it feels like you just have to stick with it. And we've seen just this church and Buddha folk just really accept us and really let us into who they really are. And so that's been really cool to see, just that openness and that desire for us to get to know them well. And once you're in the coconut, you're in for life. And so you can write that down as a quote. And so that's really fun, because I have these friends like Balint where I'm in, and he talks about everything. Like he's not afraid about stuff. And so that's really cool to have those relationships now. So that's been cool for the last 2 years. Yeah. Any other questions?
When you do read-throughs with the students, where do you start?
Yeah, great question. We've done it a few different ways. We've done it where every kid chooses whatever they want to read, and then we come together at the end of during the week, and then they share what they read in their passages, but it doesn't have to be the same as everybody else's. And this allows for kids to hear what God's saying in other parts of the Bible, which is really valuable. Often with new read-through groups, like Lindsay's and mine as well, we started in John, and we just went through John together. We often do that with students as well, where we kind of get a picture of who Jesus is from the book of John, and that's been really, and then we just kind of move into Acts and see how the church grows and what happens. But it kind of depends also on students. If in my read-through group, I have 7 guys, and they're all have been coming to church for a while, and they're all kind of Bible geeks, I guess, a little bit. And so they want to go into these like Daniel and all these, where there's like all these hidden messages or something, which I try to move them away from. And so then we kind of choose based on different things. So it depends, but John's always a great place that we start at. Yeah. Any other questions? Good. So we just want to thank you guys so much for spending time with us. We have prayer cards in the back when you guys leave if you want that. And we also brought paprika for everybody, which is really famous in Hungary. It's really strong, so be careful. And if you want to take one of those for your family, please take one and enjoy. And we would love to talk with anybody that wants to stay after. We're also meeting with people, and we did some meetings a couple days ago on the back porch with Orville and Harriet, and that was really fun. We're just getting creative on how we meet. We're getting good walks, which is really good for our health. So we would love to meet with anybody as well. So. And if you aren't getting emails from us and you'd like to get emails, come connect with us, and let's get your email, and we can send our monthly updates to you as well. So that is it.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric and Lindsay, for sharing with us. Thank you all for coming. If you want a prayer card, we've got the prayer cards on music stands in the back of the room as you exit. If you want some paprika from them, there's some packets on the communion table, so you can go ahead and grab those. So thank you so much for coming. Have a great rest of your day.